My name is Adil. I live in Lahore, Pakistan, and for most of my adult life, I believed in the simplicity of love, in the idea that if you give someone your heart, your loyalty, your time, they'll honor it. That belief shaped everything I built with my wife, Manor. We had been married for 7 years. Not too long to be jaded. Not too short to still feel like strangers. Just long enough for everything to feel familiar, warm, stable, and sometimes too predictable. I'm a high school teacher. I teach Urdu literature. My students tease me for being too emotional, always tearing up when we read Faiz or Perveen Shakir. But I've always believed that words hold power. To heal, to wound, to remember. I never imagined words would one day destroy me. Manor is a software engineer. Smart, quick-witted, always on her phone, coding, managing teams, solving problems I don't fully understand. Our worlds never truly overlapped in terms of work, but we supported each other. Or, at least, I thought we did. We live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Gulberg. It's nothing fancy, but it's ours. Every corner has a memory. The small potted plants on the balcony she insisted on buying during the lockdowns, the stain on the living room rug from the time I tripped while carrying tea, the bookshelf I built crooked, which still leans to the left. Our routine was always the same. I'd wake up first, prepare breakfast, usually and a paratha or toast and chai, and then wake Manor. We'd talk briefly before heading off to work. Evenings were spent together watching dramas or reading in silence, legs touching on the couch. On weekends, we'd visit her parents or mine. We didn't fight often. We didn't have passionate arguments or dramatic reconciliations. Life was calm, peaceful, steady. But even in that steadiness, I had started noticing small things. Subtle changes. The kind that are easy to ignore if you don't want to believe something is wrong. Manor had become more guarded with her phone. She never used to have a password, now she did. At dinner, she started smiling at messages she wouldn't share. Work stuff, she'd say. I didn't pry. I trusted her. I wanted to trust her. And maybe, deep down, I was afraid of what I'd find if I asked. There was also the way she looked at me. Or rather, the way she didn't anymore. Her gaze used to be soft, lingering. Lately, it had become distant, distracted, like her body was present, but her mind was somewhere else. I told myself she was stressed. Work was demanding. Maybe she was just tired. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then came the minor disruptions. Things I brushed aside at the time, but looking back, they were red flags fluttering in the wind. One Sunday afternoon, I returned from grocery shopping earlier than expected and heard her quickly hang up the phone as I entered. She looked startled, guilty almost. But when I asked who it was, she said it was a colleague discussing a work project. I smiled and said nothing, but something tightened in my chest. Another time, I found a receipt in her purse for a dinner at a restaurant we'd never been to, and the date didn't match any of our outings. When I asked about it, she casually said she went with coworkers after a team event. I told you about it, she added. Maybe she had. Maybe I forgot. I didn't want to accuse her, so I let it go. But it lingered in my thoughts. The biggest hint came the night of our wedding anniversary. I had planned a surprise dinner at home. Candles, soft music, her favorite biryani from that place near Alam Road. But she came home late, distracted, saying there had been a last-minute deployment at work. She appreciated the dinner, smiled for the photos I posted, but something in her felt absent. Hello. I tried to dismiss my doubts, to push away the shadows creeping into the corners of my mind. Love, I believed, meant trust. And trust meant giving space. But the more I tried to believe, the more I started noticing, really noticing, the cracks in our perfect picture. There was a shift in energy between us. The way she flinched when I touched her shoulder. The way she avoided conversations about the future. The way she slept facing away from me, every night. Then came that day. The moment everything began to change, though I didn't know it then. It was a Tuesday evening. I had returned home earlier than usual because of a school meeting cancellation. I walked in quietly, thinking I'd surprise her. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard her voice. She was in the bedroom, the door slightly ajar. She was on the phone. At first, I didn't intend to eavesdrop. But something about her tone, soft, secretive, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months, made me freeze. And then I heard it. Her voice, low and warm. "I miss you too. I hate pretending when I'm around him. I don't know how much longer I can do this." I stood there, the grocery bag slipping slightly from my fingers, my heart thudding like a war drum. My mind didn't register the words at first. I wanted to believe I'd misunderstood, that she was talking about something else. Someone else. Anyone but me. But deep inside, a truth began to uncoil, sharp, undeniable. Something had broken. Something had changed. And my world, my steady, quiet world, was about to shatter. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every fiber in my body screamed to burst into that room, to demand answers, to confront the betrayal hanging heavy in the air like cigarette smoke. But I didn't. I stood frozen outside the door, heart pounding, stomach twisted into a knot, so tight it hurt to breathe. Manor's voice lowered into a whisper I could barely make out. "I know, John. I'll figure it out.
Just give me time."
I can't leave him like this, not yet."
John.
That word. So simple. So tender. So full of intimacy. And it wasn't meant for me. I took a step back, careful not to make a sound. My hands were trembling. I slipped out of the apartment as quietly as I could, letting the door fall shut behind me without a click. I needed air. I needed space. I needed the world to stop spinning so I could think. Outside, the street was alive with the hum of evening. Rickshaws honking, children playing cricket in the alley, a fruit vendor yelling about fresh bananas. But it all sounded like white noise, distant and unreal. I sat down on the pavement across from our building, staring up at the window of our bedroom where the light still glowed. Was I dreaming? Was this some cruel twist in a drama serial? The woman I loved, no. The woman I trusted with my life, was planning a future with someone else. Talking to another man. Sharing emotions with him that she hadn't shared with me in months. And the worst part? She had no idea I knew. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go back inside for hours. I just sat there, reliving every moment of our marriage, wondering where I went wrong. What did I miss? Was I not enough? Had I changed? By the time I went back up, Manor was asleep. Or pretending to be. She lay still, back turned, just like always. I climbed into bed, but I didn't close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her soft breaths, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. The next morning, she acted normal. Smiled, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted chai or coffee. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just confessed to someone else that she was living a lie with me. I played along. I didn't ask questions. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I began watching, listening, gathering pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. She started taking calls in the bathroom with the water running. She guarded her phone like a treasure. She spent more time working late and less time asking about my day. And always, there was that distance in her eyes. Like she was looking at me from across a chasm I couldn't cross. I started recording voice memos after she left for work.
Just talking.
Talking to myself. To process. To survive. I'd sit on the floor of our bedroom and whisper into my phone. Today she wore the red dress I bought her last year. She didn't say, "Thank you." She laughed at something on her phone and then turned away when I asked. She kissed me goodnight, but her lips were cold. I was documenting my heartbreak in real time. A week later, it happened again. Another call. Another secret conversation. But this time, I recorded it. I had placed a small recording app on an old phone hidden in the closet. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to spy on my wife. But she had left me no choice. My sanity was crumbling, and I needed proof, not just for the world, but for myself. Because part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't real. But it was. The recording was short, just under 2 minutes. But it was enough. Her voice was clear. I can't stand sleeping next to him anymore. It feels like lying to a ghost. A ghost. That's what I had become. Invisible. Hollow. Already dead in her eyes. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my hands, playing the recording over and over like it was a song stuck in my head. Each word was a dagger. And each dagger carved out the man I used to be. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, letting the silence eat me alive. That was the moment everything changed. The moment I realized I couldn't go back.
Couldn't pretend.
Couldn't keep living a lie while the woman I loved planned an escape I was never meant to know about. It was the moment I decided that whatever came next, it had to be the truth. No more illusions. No more waiting. No more silence. The days that followed were a cruel performance, a stage play where I was both the silent audience and the unwilling actor. Manor continued her script, flawless in her delivery. Her smiles timed perfectly, her touch casual but calculated. She played the role of the devoted wife so well that if I hadn't heard the recording with my own ears, I would have thought I imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't imagined it. I had proof. Her words echoed in my mind day and night. It feels like lying to a ghost. She had already mourned me, already moved on. And yet, here she was cooking dinner, folding our laundry, laughing at the TV, all while her heart belonged to someone else. The tension between us grew thick, unspoken but undeniable. I started noticing everything. How she never looked me in the eyes anymore. How her phone never left her side. How she had become surgically precise in giving me just enough attention to keep suspicion at bay, or so she thought. I became quieter, withdrawn. At work, I fumbled tasks, forgot meetings, stared blankly at my screen as colleagues asked if I was okay. I wasn't, but I couldn't say why.
Not yet.
I began researching lawyers in secret, not because I was ready to file for divorce, but because I needed to know my rights. I needed to understand what would happen to the apartment, the car, the savings we had built. And more than anything, I needed to know what the aftermath would cost me, emotionally, mentally, financially. But still, I did nothing. Until the day I saw him.
It was a Saturday.
Manor told me she was meeting her cousin for brunch. I nodded, pretending to believe her. After she left, I followed. I had never done anything like this before. I didn't know what I expected to find. But something in me needed to see the truth with my own eyes, not just hear it through a muffled phone call or a voice recording. I stayed a few cars behind as she drove across town to a boutique cafe in Defense. She parked.
So did I.
I watched from my car, heart pounding, hands gripping the steering wheel like I was holding onto the last shred of sanity I had left. 10 minutes later, he arrived. Mid-30s. Clean-shaven. Dressed too well for someone casually meeting a cousin. Manor stood up when he approached and hugged him. Not a cousin hug. Not a polite side hug. A full embrace. Intimate.
Slow.
They sat across from each other, holding hands across the table. She laughed, a soft, fluttering laugh I hadn't heard in months. Her eyes sparkled. She looked alive in a way I had forgotten she could. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just an affair. It was a replacement. A substitution. She had already handed over the role of husband to someone else. I was just filling time in the shadows until she found the courage to let go of me completely. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove away, parked near the sea, and cried for the first time in years. Not loud sobs. Not dramatic wailing. Just silent tears rolling down my cheeks, one after another, until my shirt was soaked and my throat ached with all the words I never said. When I returned home that evening, Manor was already there.
She smiled when she saw me.
"How was your day?" she asked. And I lied. Peaceful. But inside, something had shifted. A resolve. A quiet understanding that the end had already come. It was only waiting to be named. The next few weeks were unbearable. Every meal we shared was a betrayal. Every touch felt foreign. I had become an intruder in my own home, watching a love story unfold where I no longer had a role. One night, I tested her. As we sat on the couch, I asked gently, "Do you still love me?"
She paused, smiled faintly.
"Of course I do." But her eyes looked away as she said it. That lie cut deeper than anything else. Because now I knew. And she didn't know I knew. We were both wearing masks, trapped in a mutual performance neither of us wanted to continue, yet neither of us dared to stop. The breaking point came a week later. I returned home early from work, something I rarely did. I had a headache, and I just wanted to sleep. But as I unlocked the door, I heard laughter. Male laughter. I stepped inside slowly. The voices were coming from the kitchen. Her voice. His voice. Together. In our home. I froze. She hadn't expected me home. The man, him, stood casually by the counter, eating fruit from our fridge like he belonged there. Monor turned, her face paling. "Oh, you're home early," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The man looked at me, then at her, then back at me. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't even blink. "I'm going to ask one time," I said quietly. "Do you love him?" She didn't answer. Not with words. She looked down. And in that silence, I had all the answer I needed. I turned around, walked out the door. And this time, I didn't come back. After I walked out of the house that evening, I didn't go to a friend's place or check into a hotel. I just drove. No destination. No map. Just the soft hum of tires against the road and the loud noise of betrayal echoing in my skull. I ended up at a small rest stop miles outside the city, the kind of place frequented by truckers and travelers who didn't want to be found. I sat on a bench, letting the cool night air numb the edges of my anger, and let myself feel it. All of it. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the regret. But something else emerged that night too. A sharp, quiet clarity. Monor hadn't just betrayed me. She had made me invisible in my own life. She had rewritten our story and cast me out of the role I once held with pride. I had given her everything. Time. Loyalty. Dreams. And now, I was discarded like an old receipt, proof of something that once mattered but now held no value. That's when the plan began to form. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't plead or cry or ask for closure. That would give her power. And I had already surrendered too much of that. No, I was going to take back my narrative. Quietly. Intelligently. And when the time was right, I would remind her exactly who I was and what she lost. I returned to the city the next morning, not home. Never again to that house, but to a small serviced apartment downtown. I called in sick to work for a week. And during those 7 days, I executed every move with surgical precision. First, I contacted a lawyer. A smart one. Discreet. I told him everything. He listened, took notes, and nodded slowly. "You have enough to file not only for divorce but also to protect your financial interests," he said. Perfect. Next, I started transferring my share of the joint savings account into a private one under my name. Legally, I was allowed. The account was joint. And while I didn't drain it, I took exactly half down to the decimal. Fair. Measured. Cold. Then, I contacted the HR department at my office. Quietly requested a department transfer to another branch in Islamabad. They agreed. New city. Fresh air. No shared memories hiding in every corner. And finally, I drafted a letter, not to her, but to her parents. Monor's mother adored me. Her father respected me. They had welcomed me into their family like a son. They deserved the truth, and I wanted them to hear it from me before the gossip reached them. The letter was honest. Polite. Painful. I didn't use angry words. I just told them what happened, how I discovered it, and that I was stepping away with dignity but not silence. I didn't accuse her of being evil or cruel. I simply told the truth. By the end of the week, everything was in motion. My lawyer filed the divorce papers. The branch transfer was approved. I signed the lease for my new apartment. And I blocked Monor on every platform, phone, WhatsApp, email, everything. But I saved one final move. I scheduled a delivery. I arranged for the divorce papers to be hand-delivered to her at our home. The home she now shared with him, I assumed. But I didn't just send the papers. I sent them inside the very gift box I had once used to surprise her on our anniversary. the one with gold ribbon and her name handwritten across the lid. Inside the box was a note. Just one sentence. I hope he was worth everything you lost. When the day came, I waited. I didn't expect a response.
I didn't want one.
But an hour after the delivery, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I knew it was her. I didn't pick up. A minute later, a voicemail came through. I hesitated, then played it. Her voice was shaking. Please just talk to me.
I didn't mean for it to happen this way.
I made a mistake. A big one. You didn't deserve this. Please, can we talk? I listened in silence. Then deleted the message. She had her chance to talk. To tell the truth. To confess. She didn't. She chose deception. She chose someone else. And now, she could live with those choices. I wasn't going to play savior to someone who watched me break and still kept lying. The next week, I moved to Islamabad.
New job.
New address. New rhythm. I told no one except close friends and family. I left behind a city that had once been filled with love and replaced it with one that had no ghosts. And slowly, the grief turned into peace. Not happiness, not yet.
But peace.
The kind that comes from knowing you refuse to let someone else decide the end of your story. The kind that grows when you reclaim your power, not with revenge, but with grace. Because sometimes, the best response isn't shouting or drama or public humiliation. Sometimes, it's silence, paired with actions so precise, so permanent, that they echo louder than any words ever could. Back in Lahore, Manor's world was collapsing, though I didn't see it firsthand. I didn't need to. The fallout had already begun the moment she opened that gold ribbon box. The box that once carried love and celebration now carried truth and consequence. She never expected it to end that way. She never thought I'd walk away without a scene, without begging, without at least one angry confrontation where she could defend herself or twist the story to feel better about her betrayal. But I gave her none of that. I left only silence. That, it turns out, was the one thing she couldn't handle. Mutual friends started reaching out a week after I moved. Not prying, just confused. Some had run into her. Others had heard whispers. Bro, what happened between you and Manor? I thought you guys were perfect. She looks wrecked, man. Like, she hasn't slept in days. I didn't respond to most. Just a simple, things didn't work out, to a few. That was all I needed to say. But then came the call from Manor's mother. She was crying. I don't understand, she said, voice cracking. You were like a son to me. What happened, Beta? Why didn't she tell us anything? I hesitated. Then I said, Auntie, please check your mail. I sent you a letter last week. It'll explain everything. She gasped softly. I thought it was something work-related. I'll read it now. We ended the call. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again, same number. This time, her tone had changed. The crying had turned to rage.
But not toward me.
I'm so sorry, she whispered. I don't know how she could do this to you. You didn't deserve this. I'm ashamed of her. Ashamed. I said nothing. She continued. Her father, he read the letter too. He hasn't spoken a word to her since. We asked her to leave our house this morning. She's staying with that man now, I think. There it was. She had traded a family, a home, a marriage built on history and love, for a man who'd smiled at her in secrecy. And now, when the truth had been aired out and disinfected by sunlight, she found herself unrecognizable in the mirror, stripped of her illusion of innocence, forced to confront herself without a script. From what I heard, that man, the one she cheated with, was beginning to show cracks too. Turns out, it's easy to be charming when you're hiding, when the thrill is in the shadows. But in the daylight, when responsibility knocks and routine sets in, the fantasy fades. A friend of hers, one I barely knew, but who had always liked me, messaged me privately. I know you probably don't want to hear anything about her, she wrote. But I thought you should know he's already cheating on her. I stared at the message, not with satisfaction, not with smug joy, but with a quiet ache. She had gambled with a man who couldn't stay loyal even when he won. And now, she was learning the hard truth. If someone cheats with you, they'll likely cheat on you too. Still, I didn't respond. Not to her friends. Not to her family after that one call. Not to the vague, desperate Instagram stories she began posting. Old pictures of us, sad quotes, verses about loss and redemption. I watched from a distance. I didn't block her on everything, just the ones that gave her direct access to me. The rest, I left open so she could see my life move forward without her. That, I realized, was the final nail. Not cruelty. Not revenge. Just progress. I started posting again after a few weeks. Not to prove a point. Just to breathe again. A hiking trip in Murray. A late night at a friend's gathering. Coffee at my new favorite spot. Laughter.
Light.
Life. And she watched it all. Silently. Every time I posted, I'd see her name in the viewer list within minutes. No likes. No comments. Just the digital ghost of someone who used to be central, now reduced to a distant spectator. Then one day, I received a parcel. No return address. Inside, a letter. Her handwriting. My biggest regret isn't losing you, it began. It's realizing too late what you were, and what I wasn't ready to be. She spoke of confusion, pressure, loneliness. She blamed herself. She didn't ask to get back together. She didn't beg. She just said she was sorry. And, maybe for the first time, it felt real. But it didn't change anything. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer. Not out of hope. Not out of pain. Just as a reminder. A reminder that people will show you who they are when they think they have you secured. That love, no matter how deep, is never an excuse for betrayal. And that walking away doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes it means you finally remembered your worth. Monar never imagined I'd leave quietly. That I'd rebuild in silence. That my revenge wouldn't come with fire and fury, but with poise and patience. She thought I'd crumble without her. But instead I evolved. And now, from afar, she watched me become the version of myself she never believed in, and the version she would never get to love again. They say healing isn't linear. That some days you'll soar, and others you'll quietly ache in corners you thought had closed. And they're right. I'd be lying if I said I never missed her smile, her laughter, the way she used to lean her head on my shoulder during long drives. But what I've learned is this. Missing someone doesn't mean you want them back. It just means you're human. And I was finally starting to feel human again. The version of me that left Lahore was broken, hollowed out, stripped of trust. But the version that stood months later in a different city, in a different life, had been stitched back together, with gold. Like kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, I chose to wear my scars as proof of survival. I didn't rush to love again. I didn't even try. I gave myself time to breathe, to rebuild, to explore who I was outside the role of a partner. I read more, traveled more. I took a solo trip to Skardu, something I always dreamed of but never did. And up there, in the quiet majesty of those ancient mountains, something inside me settled. I stood one morning before sunrise, overlooking a misty lake, hands tucked in my jacket pockets, breath fogging the air. And I realized I didn't feel pain anymore. Not anger, not bitterness, just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally let go. Not just of the person, but of the story you thought your life was supposed to follow. See, I had built a future in my head. A wedding, a house, 2 kids with her laughter, and my eyes. I had built it all. And when it collapsed, I thought I had lost everything. But I hadn't. I had only lost the illusion. What I gained was clarity. Freedom. The right to rewrite my life story. One that didn't center around someone who saw me as disposable. I started writing again, just for myself. Journaling. Capturing every raw emotion. The heartbreak, the rage, the tiny triumphs. Slowly, those journal entries turned into essays. And those essays? They caught the attention of an online magazine. They offered me a column. Write about healing, they said. Write your truth. And so I did. Week after week, I poured it out, not just my story, but the stories of people like me. Men and women who were left, betrayed, abandoned. People who were told to just move on as if heartbreak was a switch. I gave them space, a voice, and in return, they gave me community. That column became something more than words. It became purpose. I received messages from strangers across Pakistan, even from abroad, people saying, "Thank you for putting my pain into words." Some were men who had never talked about their emotions before. Some were women who left toxic marriages and found their strength. And in that journey, I realized maybe this was the reason I went through all of it. Not to lose her, but to find me. Eventually, one evening as rain tapped softly on my apartment windows, I received another message. It was from Manor. Just one line. "I read your latest column. I'm proud of you." I stared at it for a moment. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. Just out of respect for the man I had become. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her pride. I didn't need anything from her. I had outgrown that version of love. Months passed. The pain didn't return. Even the memories softened, not erased, but no longer sharp. Like a scar that had faded with time, only visible when I chose to look closely. And then, one day, at a book reading in Karachi, an event I almost didn't attend, I met someone new. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying too hard. She just was.
Calm.
Curious.
Deep.
We talked for hours about books, heartbreak, healing. She had her own story of betrayal, of rising from ashes. And as she smiled softly, I realized this was different. No pressure. No grand expectations. Just two people standing in truth, meeting each other as whole, healed beings. I don't know where it'll go. Maybe nowhere. Maybe everywhere. But what I do know is this. I'm no longer afraid. Afraid to love. Afraid to lose. Afraid to be alone. Because I've learned that the worst heartbreak didn't destroy me. It delivered me. Delivered me to myself. Now, when I walk with shoulders relaxed, steps sure. When I look in the mirror, I see a man who's been through fire and come out forged, not burned. I've made peace with what happened. And strangely, I've made peace with Manor too. Not because I forgive her for what she did, but because I forgive myself for letting it break me for as long as it did. This story didn't end the way I thought it would, but it ended the way it needed to. With freedom, with strength, with rebirth. And if you're reading this, whoever you are, wherever you are, I want you to know, it gets better. You won't always ache the way you do now. You won't always crave the person who left you behind. And one day, you'll stand in your new life, far from the wreckage, and realize that what you thought was the end was actually your beginning.